Hi friends, and welcome back to Gardening Suburbia. My name's Amanda and we are in the middle of fall, closing in on some really cold weather. I need to get my dahlia tubers out of the ground and put into storage in my basement so that they can last and hopefully make it to spring next season. So here in my zone, dahlia tubers do not make it through the winter because it gets way too cold. There are some zones that your dahlia tubers may last through the winter. I've seen some people actually trying mulching, heavily mulching your dahlia tubers if you don't get super cold winters, and then making it. But here in my zone, zone 6, I'm gonna just try my luck at putting them in my basement with some substrate. I'm going to try coco coir this year. Last season I did vermiculite and did not have a huge success with that. So I'm gonna try some coco coir. This season I waited for a really cold freeze. We had about a 29-degree Fahrenheit night, and that pretty much killed all of my dahlia tubers. So I have 4 different dahlia plants in this little flower bed right here. I waited for the greens to die back completely. I'm gonna go ahead and trim these guys down pretty much, just leaving a couple inches of the stalk, and then we'll go ahead and lift these guys out really nice and easily. The first thing I am going to do is I am going to cut back my stalks and just kind of clean this up a little bit. It's a little easier to get out of the ground. Now, I believe if you were going to leave these to overwinter, if you were to cut back your stalks, these stalks are pretty much hollow. So you really want to make sure that you're covering this so that it's not letting water go down to your tubers and therefore letting those tubers rot in the ground. My shovel. So I'm going to move back my mulching. Messed up my there it is. I'm gonna need to know what variety this is so I know what it is when I go to plant it next season. So I want to make sure that I'm trying not to pierce my tubers as much as possible. So I'm sure if you lived in a zone, I'm pretty sure zone 7 and above, dahlia tubers actually are perennial. If you live in those zones, I'm sure that you could also just leave all of the foliage on top, just because during the winter seasons, a lot of the bugs in your little micro ecosystem that you've created with your garden, those bugs lay eggs and hibernate and whatnot on the foliage of your dying plants. And so I do like to keep a lot of my foliage in the garden during the winter, but seeing as I'm pulling out my dahlia tubers to overwinter them in my basement, I'm going to have to remove all the foliage. So I do take great care to kind of use my shovel to kind of pull back the dirt, and I'm really trying not to pierce these tubers, because if the tubers get pierced, they are no longer viable. So not in this video, but in my next video, I'm actually going to go through and clean my tubers with water, and then let them air dry, and then go ahead and actually separate them out into viable tubers with the body, the neck, and the eye. I know for a fact that by washing these tubers, I am actually getting the best view on them. Last season, I did not wash my tubers whatsoever before trying to separate them out, and it was almost impossible to figure out where the eyes were. I can tell you today that by washing them, you do get a better sense of where those eyes are. There aren't going to be equal amounts of eyes to the necks and bodies, so there's not going to be an individual eye per tuber. You kind of just have to go through and figure out what you have and kind of divide it from there. But just need to make sure that you take extra special care when you are dividing out your tubers so that you give yourself the best chances of having the most amount of plants for next season.
So I went to my front yard. I had planted some dahlias there that my sister had gifted to me. She started hers from seed. I'm gonna ask her what varieties they are because I do not remember, but they were really pretty, like soft yellow with like some pink in the center. But these are the tubers that I got from those guys. Mind you, those were started from seeds in the spring this season. So just even having this many tubers, kind of crazy. The other ones, the bigger balls of potato looking tubers, those were dahlias started from tubers this spring. So I had purchased those from Amy at West Wind Flower Farm, which she has some beautiful tubers if you're in the area in Cincinnati. Highly recommend grabbing some tubers from her. She does a sale in the spring. But I'm gonna ask my sister about these tubers. So I have 3 bundles of these guys. Pretty tiny, but still a bunch of tubers for that one variety, which will bring a lot of joy next season. So the next thing I am going to do is actually clean up some of these loose roots. The main portions of the dahlias you want to keep intact. Let me grab a bigger clump. So the anatomy of a dahlia tuber is, let me find a good one to do example off of. Okay, so we have this big guy. So this big bulky part is the body of the dahlia tuber. It has the neck, which is that narrower section where it connects with the base of the plant. And then there is the eye. So I'm pretty sure that little lighter section right there is an eye. I had a really hard time last season differentiating between eyes, what were eyes and what weren't. So I think this season I'm actually going to wash my dahlia tubers. Last season I did not, and I think that made it a little bit more difficult to kind of figure out the different parts. But in order for you to have a successful planting of dahlias, your tuber needs to have the body, the neck, and an eye. The eye is the portion where the stalk grows from. So hopefully we have a bunch of dahlia tubers ready to be stored for next season. Thank you guys so much for joining me in this little outdoor escapade for the short, brief moment that it was. I hope you guys are having a wonderful week, and just take some moments to rest, recuperate, and think forward to next year's garden. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you. Bye.